As we light these yellow candles, we vow never to forget the lives of the Jewish men, women, and children who are symbolized by these flames. They were tortured and brutalized by human beings who acted like beasts. Their lives were taken in cruelty. May we be inspired to learn more about our 6 million brothers and sisters as individuals and as communities, to recall their memory throughout the year so that they will not suffer a double death. May we recall not only the terror of their deaths, but also the splendor of their lives. May the memory of their lives inspire us to hallow our own lives and to live meaningful Jewish lives so that we may help ensure that part of who they were shall always endure. Please rise now for El Malei Rachamim, the memorial prayer.
El Malei Rachamim Shochen Mamromim Hamatzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina Im Kedoshim Utorim Kezohar Harakia Manzahirim V'nishmot kol acheinu b'nei Yisrael shemasru et nafsham al kiddush Hashem v'yol kiyum ham v'yol geulat haaretz Vehaganota Anna Bal Harachamim Tastirein Beseter Knafecha Leolamim Titzror Bitzror HaChaim Et Nishmoteihem Adonai Hu Nachalatam Veyanuchu B'Shalom Al mishkevotam v'nomar Amen.
Please be seated. This time I'd like to call upon Andra and Laura Weisberger, who will share with you a poem written by a 17-year-old boy during the Nazi occupation. It's a meditation on what it means, and especially what it meant at that time to be a Jew.
A Jew forever, a Jew in departing, a Jew in arriving.
A Jew in arising, a Jew in sitting.
A Jew in walking, a Jew in standing.
A Jew in thought, a Jew in deed.
A Jew in trouble, a Jew in joy.
A Jew in speech, a Jew in silence.
a Jew in drinking, a Jew in eating,
a Jew in business, a Jew in studying,
a Jew in shoes, a Jew in clothing,
a Jew in hatred, a Jew in love,
a Jew in God, a Jew in people,
a Jew in life, a Jew in death,
a Jew in heaven, a Jew on earth.
a Jew you were born, and a Jew you will die.
So I'd like to ask everyone to please turn in the programs for tonight to the middle section. On the right-hand side, you'll see the Mourner's Kaddish for victims of the Shoah. This is a special Kaddish that was written for Yom HaShoah. It intersperses the traditional Mourner's Kaddish with the names of the ghettos and death camps and sites where Jews perished during the Shoah. I'd like to ask everyone to do at this point is to rise, and I'll ask the congregation to recite the Hebrew, and I will recite those names of the death camps and ghettos that are interspersed in the Kaddish.
Yitgadal,
Auschwitz,
V'yitkadash,
Lodz,
Shemei Rabbah,
Ponar,
V'alma Divrah Chirutei,
Baba Yar,
V'yamlich Malchutei,
Majdanek,
V'chayechon U'vyamechon,
Birkenau,
U'v'chaye Dechol Beit Yisrael,
Kovno,
V'agala U'vizman Kariv,
Yanovska,
V'imru Amen.
Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevorach Leolam Olome Omaya,
Yitbarach V'yishtabach,
Theresienstadt,
V'yitpa'ar V'yitromam,
Buchenwald,
V'yitnaseh V'yithadar,
Treblinka,
V'yit'aleh V'yithalal,
Vilna,
Shemei D'Kudsha,
Bergen-Belsen,
Brechu, Le'ela,
Mauthausen,
Min Kol Birchata V'Shirata,
Dachau,
Tushbechata V'Nechemata,
Minsk,
Damiran V'Alma,
Warsaw,
V'Imru Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'Chaim Alenu V'Al Kol Yisrael, V'Imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'Imroma, Uyaseh Shalom,
Alenu V'Al Kol Yisrael, V'Yimru. Amen. Please be seated. Not more than about 8 hours ago, I was in this room taking part in another program relating to Yom HaShoah. Our 7th grade students and their families were seated in the very seats that you were seated. And in front of the room was Matt Gold. Matt is a college student who grew up in our congregation and participated a couple of years ago in the March of the Living program. It's a program that took, that time, high school students first to Eastern Europe to visit the sites of the concentration camps, sites of the Holocaust, and then in a normal year takes students to Israel. That year was the first year of the Intifada. Things were very difficult in Israel, and the program went to London instead. Matt was kind enough to come in and share his experiences and slides of his trip with our 7th grade students. And I want to say, first of all, that I seldom have felt prouder of any of the kids that grew up in this congregation than I did just seeing Matt up here this morning talking to our 7th graders and sharing his experiences, all that he learned, and all the feelings that came from this trip that are still very much with him even years later. It was very interesting to see the pictures that Matt came back with of the death camps and surroundings. It was interesting, first of all, to see things that I'd read so much about. Pictures of the still intact crematoria, barracks, train tracks that the trains that brought so many Jews to their deaths rode upon not 60 years ago. It was, for me, even in slides, even at this remove, absolutely chilling to see these pictures. And what was perhaps even more chilling, what made it an experience that was not only frightening but also eerie, is that all of these places were empty. The barracks, where Matt showed us that Jews slept 9 to a pallet, were empty. The gas chambers, empty. The crematoria, empty. Completely desolate. And it occurred to me that as moving as Matt's story was and as affecting as his experience was, it was just in seeing these slides, and it was not complete. In the March of the Living, there was also a part that we didn't get to experience with Matt. That was actually meeting people who had experienced the Holocaust. And I think that the story of the Holocaust really is incomplete without really meeting the people. We can't fully understand, I think, the cruelty, the hatred, the barbarism that brought on and allowed the Holocaust to move forward without talking to people who experienced it. At the same time, we can't really appreciate the courage, the self-sacrifice, and the defiance shown by those who went through the Holocaust, those Jews and other people who were victims of Nazi terror. And that's why this evening really is a fitting cap not only to my day, but I think also to all the learning and all the seeing we've done with the Holocaust. As many trips to museums as we can take, as many exhibits as we can see, as many films as we can view, as many documentaries as we can watch. It's really impossible to understand the Holocaust without talking to somebody who went through it. And that's why we are really fortunate tonight to have with us Manya Baruch, who is a Holocaust survivor, but even more important, someone who is willing to share her experience with us, someone who believes very strongly that it's incumbent upon her to share that, and that sharing will be a benefit to our community. I had a chance to talk to Manya just a little bit before our program, and it impressed me that we have a connection with her that goes beyond this experience. She is also a person that, even after her Holocaust experience, became a builder, a pioneer in a community, helped to make a Jewish community grow. And coming out to see what she sees here, she remarked to me just how wonderful an enterprise this really is to be part of a growing Jewish community out in what she referred to as the sticks, and we won't take that personally. And again, I have to say that whatever else Manya shares with us tonight, and I know that it'll be very moving and very educational for us all, the fact that someone can emerge from the Holocaust as a builder is, to me, one of the most impressive things that I've ever seen. It's my pleasure at this time to introduce tonight's speaker, Manya Baruch.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank Rabbi Cohn for giving me a chance to be here with you this evening. I am very impressed that you, as a community, start building from scratch and work so hard to get your own synagogue. I'm very proud to stand here before you and have the Torah next to me, which is my biggest security. There were many years where I didn't even see a Torah in front of me, or did I see or could go to a synagogue and go in and thank Hashem that I was still alive. And I assure you, and I tell you, I'm here in God's house, that these things that have happened to us, you cannot ever feel or see or believe when you see a movie, when you read a book. It's not possible to convert that in the pain and the horror that we had to go through. Not one day, not 2 weeks, not months, but years. I myself escaped 6 countries with the Nazis on my heels, on my family's heels constantly. We were several times separated, and we were fortunate enough to come together again only to be separated again. And just before the liberation, I found myself all alone in a Catholic convent which I had sought refuge into for a whole year. I was born in Berlin, Germany. My parents, myself, my two brothers, were together in Berlin until 1937. My father got an affidavit finally from America, from his uncle. And he was trying so desperately to get a visa and papers for us to leave Berlin. But it was impossible. In the meantime, the Kristallnacht happened. But before that, my father was so afraid. He sent my mom and us children to Poland. The first things I learned in Poland was dirty Jew, the first Polish words, taka dzieciak. It was the words that I will never forget. We had just come over from Germany, and we were hoping to find a little peace, and my mother was obliged to take us out of school. The hatred was incredible. And she had to go back to Berlin. My father was waiting there for the visa to get it there from the consulate, and it was in vain. So my mom went back to Berlin to be with my dad and us children, of course, together. The times were terrible. And on the night of the 9th of November, it actually, in the truth, it was in the morning at 6 o'clock on the 10th of November, that the Nazis knocked on our doors. They were rounding up at that time only men. The reason for it was because my father, we were not Germans. My father was from the Ukraine, and my mother was Polish. And she had lived in Germany since she was a child, but they never issued her papers, citizen papers. You had to be born in Germany to be a citizen. And since I don't know if anybody here remembers, at the time, just around 1938, Dachau and Buchenwald had sent back to wives the ashes of their husbands in urns, and nobody knew how these people were killed. And everybody tried very desperately to leave Germany, and in many cases it wasn't possible. Well, the reason I tell you this is because on that very day in Paris, in the consulate, a young teenager by the name of Greenspan shot and killed an aide to the ambassador of Germany. And that's why Germany took this action, which we, unfortunately, called the Kristallnacht. And the reason we called it Kristallnacht was because first things they did, they ran into every store that was Jewish and crushed the windows and brutally took everything they had in sight with them. The brutal things continued to take our fathers, husbands, brothers, cousins away from the families. In Berlin, in the 20th century, we never saw them again. All of these people that took on that action were killed, except one in the family, that was my dad. It was under very incredible circumstances that he was not taken. I can't go into it in detail. I'm scratching the iceberg of everything I tell you here. We managed, my daddy, my papa, in 1938, in the middle of winter, to leave, to escape Berlin to Belgium over Cologne, Germany. And we couldn't go all together. The smuggler said it's not wise to take a whole family. So he had us to come afterwards, which indeed it happened. My father made it to Antwerp in Belgium, and paid a lot of money to get my mom and us kids to the border of Cologne. For some tragic reason, we were separated from my mother. My two brothers. One brother was with my mom, and the small brother, my youngest one, was with me. And we were caught. We were caught and brought to the headquarters of Gestapo. We were just kids, but I am standing right there. It never leaves you. It will never leave you, the separation of a family. No matter what happens, you're just not yourself. We were just kids, and we were questioned and questioned. And we would not say a word about my mother. We said they were all in Belgium, and we were trying to visit some friends here. So they couldn't get anywhere with us. They sent us over to the other railroad station and said, see this train? That one goes back to Berlin. That was in February 1939. But I took my brother, and in this crowded Bahnhof of the station, I sneaked out with him into Cologne, into the street. I had nobody there, and I did not want to go back to Berlin. So I made it out and went on the streets, and I tried to find the little restaurant my mom had gone beforehand with us children, and I found it. It was a Jewish restaurant, and they helped us somewhat. They couldn't do too much either, but my little brother they said that the Red Cross in Herbestal, which was on the border, would take children under 12. And that's, if I would send him, put him on a train, he would go to Herbestal to the Red Cross, and they would let him pass the border if the family was in Antwerp. And I said, yes, my parents are in Antwerp. I had no idea if my mom had made it. But this is exactly what happened. I separated from my little brother. In putting him on a train, I had the guts to go back to that very station that we were arrested. And I put him on a train, and he made it to Belgium. But I was there by myself, without money, without a family, and without papers, a right to stay in that city of Cologne. I begged the people to teach me how to cross the border. I would make it over the border. I'm not going back to Berlin, was my saying constantly. And finally, one family, I never forget their name. The name was Mosbach. God bless them wherever they are. They took me in to stay at least for a while and teach me how to cross the border, which was near, in some, this has been a long time. I used to say it, but little by little, I just don't want to be reminded of it too much. I made it to that border. Kirchenwerder was the name, and the last city of Cologne, Kirchenwerder. They sent me there to a school teacher pair that was still in the village there, that was Jewish. And I made it to their house. And I made it to go and was taught how to leave. I could not write down one word of directions. I had to memorize every single step of the way, how to make it. And I did. But I was caught by a soldier. I was trying to avoid the territory, and I found it. But there were German soldiers. The military had they were trying to not to, how do you say? I'm just in the middle of this, and it's very hard for me to think back. But I heard cannons, and it was very noisy, and I stopped, and it was in the middle of nowhere, and it was snowing. And I had no idea. After I tried to avoid this noise, maneuvers, it's not my English day today, they were doing maneuvers. And I heard that, and I was scared, of course, of the terrible noise of the cannons and what have you. And I turned back, and I tried to go somewhere else, and I ran into a soldier with a rifle, and he shouted, "Halt!" And that was so quiet, there was no sound. No sound whatsoever except the cannons and that shooting that I tried to avoid. And he said, "Was machen Sie denn here? What are you doing here?" And I said, at this moment, as so many times in my life of keeping my life, the intuition always told me what to do. I was so tired of always saying the lies, of not saying what was right, and I absolutely felt I had to say what I had to say. I said, "Is it a crime? Is it a crime to be a Jew and to want to live? Is it a crime that I want to live? I'm only a child, and why can't I go to my parents?" And he said in German to me, he said, "Well, you have a lot of guts being here by yourself. I've never seen anybody here by himself. Usually they come in whole bunches." He said, "But you follow me." And of course, I had no idea where he's going to bring me. He brought me right back at the very frontier where I was supposed to cross, to that little house with the arm that goes up and down. He brought me in there, and after I was searched, he said, "Sie haben aber Schwein gehabt," which means in good English, "You were the luckiest thing alive." And they let me go. To this day, I'm standing here before you alive. I tell you, this has happened. Angels were around us all the time. I made it, and I have to tell you, I made it to Belgium. The war broke out. We settled a little bit in Belgium. May 1940, the Germans marched in. First they bombed the airports and the railroad stations and came into the city. My parents, of course, tried to immediately leave. And we went to the railroad station, not such luck. Even the non-Jewish people were there with sack and pack and running for their lives into the trains. They were overfilled. People were outside hanging like grapes on them. But they said another train will come. The next came, we couldn't make it on it. The third train, that was about the last one out of Antwerp, and we made it in there. And the train took us all the way across, bomb and all. Some of the stations, before we came into France, we went to France, but before we came there, we were bombed on the train as well, and everybody that ran out was killed. My father, for some reason, he says, "No, you're not going out, you stay." And we were all there. So all along the way, things happened that somehow wanted us to live. And we made it all across France to the end where the Spanish Pyrenees were this natural border. We tried to go to Spain, it was impossible. We couldn't make it. In the meantime, we were deported. We were rounded up, all Jews were rounded up, and they deported us to the first camp I've been. This was still southern France. And these were the camps where they had, from the Franco regime, from the war with Franco and the communists, where France had interned all the refugees that had left Spain. You can imagine the conditions, or I cannot even give you back. There was no hygiene. There were no toilets. There was no water. There was nothing. There were barracks, empty barracks with so much dirt and things that we never even I have never seen in my life. We immediately, we tried to clean, we had nothing. And they kept us in this camp for a while, rounded us up again, and deported us to another camp. This one was a little bit more organized. We were given bread rations, like 1 slice a day, and some watery soup. And again, no hygiene. No, we couldn't wash ourselves. We had no toilets. Pretty soon the children broke out in some terrible rashes. We had no doctor, we had no medicine, we had nobody who cared for us. We were the forgotten people. And I make a long story short, that didn't last long either. We were deported again into another camp. The third camp was Vernet, which was a punishment camp because we had avoided, again, a roundup of Jews in the little city of Orlis, Liban, where we had sneaked out and gotten my dad, my mom, and us children. But when the city was rounded up, we managed to escape into the mountains without anything. And we were caught there too. They even sent gendarmes after us high up in the mountains. And they brought us down in chains to this little village of Orlis, Liban, where we were put like animals in a cage behind bars. Turned out some of the citizens, the peasants, came by in like a procession and brought us food and blanket. And there were humans. And one Dutch couple that was free in that village, Jewish, they tried to bribe a sheep herder to marry me. And so that my parents shouldn't, and us as a family, should not be deported out of Orlis, Liban. We managed to get the papers, and but before you got married in France, in that part of France, you had to advertise 3 days avertis on the door of the city hall. So we were not actually legally married, but the papers were there. And when the gendarmerie found out that somebody must have said something, they picked us up with a big bus that was empty, and they put us as one family. We were the only ones left in Orlis, Liban, and put us on that bus and deported us to a punishment camp by the name of Vernet. Now, you've heard of all the lists, if you've heard, that were notorious killing our people. I tell you something. There were many camps in southern France where the cemeteries were bigger than the camp, where the children were dying like you can't imagine, like not to believe, of starvation and sickness alone. But Vernet was different. Vernet was a punishment camp for men only. When we were brought in there, we were marching through this camp with a gendarmerie on each side. My mother took a coat and put over me because the men were hollering and shouting and screaming on each side. It was unrealistic. It was surrealistic. It was not real. You can't imagine the scare that it gave us. They brought us through this whole horror of a camp, and ended up at the end of this camp were empty barracks where they had previously deported our people that we have been together in Orlis, Liban. They brought us in one empty barrack, and again, we had angels. Baruch Hashem, they ever were with us. That angel turned out to be, they brought in a soldier who was in the French uniform, but they said he was he was from Spain. And he was in that camp from some punishment. He never told us. He did not talk to us very much at first, but we were really very scared we were not able, my parents were not able to sleep for fear somebody would come in and take us out as children. This man turned out to be, his name was Pierre Pereira. Pereira. As long as I live, I won't forget this human. It turned out he was a secret Spanish Jew, a Marrano. He was practicing Judaism in the quiet, and he was a Christian. He was totally for the rest of them. But he confessed to my dad, and he said, "Do not fear. I will help you, because I know how you feel." And he really helped us. Nobody could come into our barak. Nobody. Just can you imagine? But we had the misfortune that the sheep herder that was paid, I don't know, 25,000 francs, which was not much, but at that time, he wanted more money, and he wrote a letter into the camp to my dad. He wants more money or he won't marry me. This came in the camp. And of course, the headquarters, the captain of this camp immediately called my dad. My dad was beaten up. When my turn came, he was pounding at me, was screaming and yelling, of course, in French. By that time, I spoke French already. And he said, "You're not going to get away with this. You're liars, you filthy Jews. You always do the same trick on us." I didn't say a word. And he sent me back. My parents were so happy to see me. Again, I have to tell you, it wasn't long before. Oh, they brought in the shepherd into the camp. I have to tell you this. And the first thing, when the captain asked me the name of the man, I luckily knew the name. François Ruffet was his name, the man I was supposed to marry. And he said, "Quel âge il a?" The first thing, he says, "What age is he?" And of course, nobody ever told me his age. And it came out of me like, I don't know. I said, 28, monsieur, just out of the head, 28. When the man came in, and they would come and have him on the side on the barracks, and he would come and let me be with him for a moment. And the first thing I said to him was, "Quel âge avez-vous, monsieur? What age is your age, mister?" And he said, 28. I never forget that. That was the reason that he believed me. That was the reason they let us stay for a while. And that was the reason they did not do for a moment anything, because they didn't know themselves what to do. However, after they had sent François Ruffet home, they would deport us again. They deported us to another camp. By the name, I don't know if you heard of it. I was in Vernet, which I just mentioned. I was in Camp de Riefsalt, and I was in Camp de Gurs, was my last camp. It was 5 camps we went through. We were all separated. First, my brothers disappeared, and then my father was deported out of Camp Riefsalt. And I was left in Camp Gurs alone with my mother. My mother contracted typhus fever, and she was separated from me into another barrack where I could not go and see her. She we didn't know at the time that it was typhus. And in the meantime, the family Rothschild gave a lot of money to bring some orphans out from the camp. And one day a woman come in, and I have to tell you, I was known in the camp as a singer. Nobody knew my name, Manya, because wherever I went, I was a Meshuggah. Everybody cried, and I sang, or do something. I sang? What? I had to sing? And everybody loved it, and sing Manya here and sing Manya there, and pretty soon I was known as a singer. I knew a lot of songs, Yiddish and German. That was the language we spoke. I learned French songs. I learned one English song, and I sang that one in the camps. South of the border, down Mexico way. Exactly. I didn't know what the heck I was singing, but I sang South of the border. This was really, imagine, I wanted to know an English song, an American song. Somebody here? So anyway, because of that, a woman came in that was given money by the Rothschild family to take out about 7 girls, 7 children. I was a teenager already. I was not a child. I was a teenager. That's how old I am. And I tell you, she had 6 laissez-passer, which means permissions to take out 7 children, and 6 children were available at that point in the camp of girls. And then she had heard me sing when she came in first. She says, "Bring me the girl that sings." And I was coming to her, and she said, "I'm going to bring you out tomorrow. We're taking you to an orphanage where you're going to sleep in a real bed, and you're going to have real food, and you're going to be fine." I said, "No." I said, "My mommy is here in this camp. I cannot leave her." She says, "Where's your mommy?" She said, I said, "They took her away in the Lazarette." And she said, "You better come with us. You're not going to see your mother." But what did I do? I have to tell you this because the bondage of parents with the children was very, very close. I sneaked out of the barrack that very night, and I ran to my mama's Lazarette, it was called, in the sick quarters of the camp, which was way out on the other side. I was not allowed to leave the camp at night, but I sneaked out the same, and I made it to our barrack. I knew where the Lazarette was. And I woke her up, and when I walked in, she was covered with her coat and with her dress. Everything she had was covered. There were hardly any blankets. And I said, "Mama," as she come out from her clothes, she says, Gottes Willen, Manya, was machst du hier? What are you doing here?" I said, "Mommy, they're coming, they want to take me out tomorrow to an orphanage." She says, go immediately, go." I said, "No, Mommy, without you, I'm not going." And I started crying, and she said, then she used her weapon. She knew how to reach me. She said, "You ungrateful bastard child." I mean, things like I've never heard of her say. "You will be responsible for my death. If you don't leave, then you don't ever speak to me again, and you'll be responsible if something happens to me. Because of you, I cannot leave the camp." This is what she said. "Because of you, I cannot leave the camp." I couldn't believe her talk the way she did. But you know, I went back to the barrack all the way crying. I didn't know what to do. I honestly didn't know what to do. And I said, "I'm really in the way of my mom. She's never talked to me like this." And when they came to pick us up in the morning, I went. I was there in this truck. I will never forget it. The truck came up and took us children away out of Camp the Girls. And I was in there. I don't know to this day how I had the courage to leave Mom and go. But that was the best thing I did, because the camp was evacuated the following week. A French nurse saved my mom's life. She took her home with her for a while and nursed her back to health. My mom made it. She was liberated in France, as skinny as a ghost. My experience in that orphanage, I had to run away because the Germans were coming in. and I was running away. I can't tell you the experiences I went through to make it to my dad. And in the meantime, my papa had wrote me a letter where he was. He was on the Italian border in Nice, in where the Alps were, in a little tiny village, Saint-Martin-Vésubie, about 70 kilometers from Nice. I had to take a bus to go high up there. That's where I made it. I ran off from the orphanage. I cannot tell you the time, the incredible hardship that I had to go through, a whole night waiting for another train to come, among not only the gendarmerie who were searching everybody for papers, but also Germans were present. There was between Nice and Marseille, a little town, I forgot the name, was bombed by the British. They were bombing the Havre, the port of the city. And among bombing, among Germans, among the dreadful gendarmerie of the French, I was hiding among them, all them around me. I heard German speaking, the French on one side, the German on the other side. And I saw the gendarmerie running there, but they all ran for the bombs. They all were going undercover, and so did I. That was one station between where I was, in the city was called Vic-sur-Cère, and the city where I headed for my dad, Nice. And then I went to Marseille. And in Marseille I had to stay all night. But I made it through. And finally, I made it to my dad, to Nice. Also a long story with a lot of hiding and making it out, making it to get to my dad, which I did. No, the rest was too long. In the Alps, nestled, Saint-Martin-Vésubie, a little village, was occupied by the Italian gendarmeries. The carabinieris, as they were called, who were guarding the Italian border. And they were already in France. But they never deported us. They left us alone. The Italians never bothered us. We had to come in twice a day to sign in. That was all. That didn't last long either. Germans were getting away from North Africa and passed into Italy, and were occupying that part where I was in Nice. And we had to escape over the Alps on foot to Italy. So it was a long journey. It was a bloody long journey. We were about 900 people, families with children, old people, crippled. We had a line all the way going down the way. Some people couldn't make it. Some of them came up on the top and said, we don't go down there, we go back. Not everybody had the courage to go into a foreign country, foreign language. And what is going to happen there? They're fascisti there. Who's going to help us, the fascists? But we did. My father took us children. Mama was still in Gurs with typhoid fever, as we found out from a friend of hers. And we left Saint-Martin-Vésubie, and we made it into Italy. We were separated. My father was jumping a one-story window and broken his bones, where a priest found him and hid him in a church. My brother Ziggy was deported to Auschwitz, and my little brother managed, because they were all hiding in a movie theater, he was under a seat where they didn't want to see him. He was a little blonde guy. And the Germans came in there, in that theater, because they couldn't get into the synagogue, was closed in Florence, Italy, where we had made it. And I find myself by myself again, escaping to Rome. My last phase was Rome, Italy. In Rome, Italy, I was on the street, and I tried to get into a church or convent. There was a lot of convents, and I found a French convent. I spoke French fluently, and I went into the sisters, and I said, I'm a convert, and I am in need of shelter, please help me. And the sisters took me in. I pretended I was Catholic. I was even singing in the church. They taught me the Ave Maria. Things like that when you think about it. I don't know to this day. How did I get to this convent? How did I get to be in a church on Sunday and sing Ave Maria? I mean, it was so unreal to me. But the convent, the sisters were very kind to me. But I was really a very bad candidate. I became very sick. And there was no surprise, not only physically, but mentally as well. The sisters had to smuggle me into a hospital for an operation. And I was operated on. That means that I was all infested with pus, my entire throat. I had no resistance. And they had to go in and had to take my tonsils out no matter what. I didn't want to go. I said, I can't go to the hospital. I have no papers. I'm not legally here. I'm hiding from the Germans. I'm hiding from the fascisti. Please, the nuns, I begged them, don't send me to the hospital. But I was too weak to plead. They just took me and brought me in. They said, don't worry, Mariana. That was my name then. You will be fine. You are among our people. There are nuns in the hospital only. But that's what they thought. I was operated on. I don't want to go into details. They had nothing in that hospital. That was totally cleared by the German, was everything. They were cutting on me. I felt the scissors going. They had nothing. They had to take it out. I don't want to go into details on it, but I came out of that ordeal too. I lost my consciousness and I woke up somewhere else because the fascisti came in and were hunting for me. They found my real name on the register. The innocent nuns had put down Manya Hartmeyer, which was my name. It's a German name, you know. What is she doing here? So they wanted to know who I was. Who's Manya Hartmeyer? So that's when I found out much later. The nuns had smuggled me out of the hospital that very night and brought me somewhere I don't know. I don't remember anything. All I know was one day I was myself again, skinny as a rat, and we had nothing to eat. That's when I was liberated. I only scratched the iceberg, ladies and gentlemen. I can't give you back all that in between to fill in. It takes pages. I wrote 250 pages. I just finished it. It took me 15 years to do so. And I tell you, I'm in a house of God. This is, I give it to you like it was. The liberation, the American soldier that liberated us never knew what he liberated. Big 5 o'clock in the morning, I will give you back the liberation because I think I need to tell you this. 5 o'clock in the morning, an Italian Jewish woman from the cellar came up in the dormitory where I was sleeping with the nuns. And she said, sono arrivati gli americani, sono arrivati, Mariana, she woke me up. She says, they are here, the Americans. They are here. And I jumped out of my bed like crazy, and I ran to the window, but I couldn't see anything. And I went downstairs, and I opened the door this much, and I was looking for the swastikas because I saw the tremendous tremored sounds of the tongues and the equipment that was going by the tiny street on the convent. I look out and I was looking for the swastikas, but I didn't see them. I saw stars. And I opened again a little bit, and there were no Germans. And I ventured out the door, and at that moment, a jeep stopped with 4 or 5 soldiers. They were with rifles and gear, war gear. And I saw they were not Germans. And one came up and said, Signorina, Signorina, agua, agua, water, please. They come from the battlefield, you know, from Anzio, Cassino, Salerno. These were all battlefields, destroyed battlefields. We crossed them, I've seen them. No civilian has seen them, I was there. They came, and for the first time in my life, I saw a human being that I could talk to and not run away from. I kissed his boots, and the soldier didn't know at the time what I was doing. Aqua, aqua. So I ran in and I brought water. And we couldn't talk. They were speaking English, and I didn't speak English, of course, but I wanted, he said, me, Herbie Schumann. And Herbie Schumann, this was my liberator. This was my liberator. And I said, Manya, I heard myself saying for the first time my own name. I said, Manya. And you know, it was like, you know, when you're in a jungle, you can imagine Tarzan and Jane, me Tarzan, you Jane. Go ahead. What can you say? What can you do? Well, I mean, you couldn't. But he understood. He understood. And immediately he'd take his name, he write out his name, it's a whole address, and I write down my name, my address. I heard from him. And guess what? 30 years later, network news here, New York, found my soldier back and reunited me with him. I had only been with him a few minutes. This was like giving me my life back. And ladies and gentlemen, that day of my liberation, I took as my birthday the day I was born, because I didn't want to know of the rest of my life again. Sometimes, you know, now I'm finished with my story that I have wrote. When I read it, it's different as when you talk, you know. It is so different. I couldn't believe that I was actually there. That actually this all happened to me. That actually I came back out of a war. I found my brother Ziggy in Auschwitz back. I found my little brother Willy in a fascist uniform in an orphanage in northern Italy. I found back my mama, a French nurse that saved her life, and my papa, who was saved by a Catholic priest in a church. He had hidden my papa in an old aged people home, made him old. At the time he was 42 years old, but he passed as an old man, made him look like he was an old man. And my papa survived. My mama came out. typhus fever and all. She had lost all her hair. And my brother from Auschwitz, Willi came, my little brother, with a fascist uniform, and myself. The President of the United States, President Roosevelt, brought me over here with 900 other refugees to Fort Ontario, Oswego, New York. Is anybody here who knows the story of Haven? That was my story. The President himself brought me over. Ruth Gruber was our guide. She wrote the book about us. I only scratched the surface, I tell you. I could tell you this is unbelievable, unbelievable. All the people, I'm not talking about me, that came out of this horror are miracles. You look up on miracles. So incredibly cruel and horrible to live a life where your life hangs every second doesn't mean the next second you don't know if you're going to make it or not. Every moment of this life that we lived, we tried not to give up hope. It wasn't easy. It was very difficult. I wanted to see my mom and my dad again. And Hashem was extremely good to us. I saw them back. I have my brothers back. I brought you, my brother has an incredible voice. I'm talking about a tenor, beautiful voice. It's not a commercial. It's just that I want to show off with him. I gave the temple a present of a tape. He made it beautiful. You will find it really rewarding to listen to it. It's mostly music you like, probably. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I consider myself very, very happy and lucky to be here in front of you. That miracles happen to us, that we came out, and we come out and be able to tell you this. It's not often that I talk about it, I assure you. I finished my book and I intend to publish it, and I'm sure you will read it someday. It is something to think about. And I will end this with telling you one thing. Yes, I learned a lesson. I learned a big lesson in this horrible war. I learned a lesson of our goodness and kindness people that perished. And that we are here for a reason, that I'm here standing before you for a reason, to tell you and let you know that is the most important thing than anything else, is love one another. No matter what synagogue you go to, no matter how you pray to Hashem, please, this is a lesson I learned from the Holocaust. We cannot afford to be hateful or hate for no reason or look down on somebody else. If he wants to pray or be with Hashem in one way, it doesn't matter. Because in the concentration camps, I assure you, it didn't matter how you prayed to Hashem. If you were Orthodox or liberal or whatever, it didn't matter. We all were one. We have to be one. We have to be one free. And the only thing I can finish here that I have told you about, part of my life, is that think about it. Think about it deeply. That the most important thing in our life is love. I want to thank you for having me here, because I find it extremely honorable to be in a synagogue. It was 2 years I've been in a camps, and I never saw anything of what was so dear to us. It was very difficult to live this way. I can only say, be very grateful, cherish every day, and be happy with your family that you are together. Thank you.
Manya has graciously agreed to take a few questions before we conclude our program. I'd like to ask if you have a question, if you could just raise your hand, and then when you're called on, stand up and try to be as loud as you can. We'll try to bring the microphone out into the congregation in just a second.
Feel free to ask, because you know, I don't think you will often find somebody that has actually been through what we have, and you need to be informed. This isn't on.
It's gonna.
I'll screen it.
Okay.
We'll just,
I'm just curious.
one second.
Well, I'm just curious. I found it very moving about your mother pushing you away when she had typhus for your own good, and you were confused about that, obviously, at the time. When you finally got back together with her, did you have any discussions about that?
You know, it's interesting you ask this question. It's very interesting. I was separated from my mom 17 years because I was here in America already. She was in Israel. And I don't know if you remember the television series, Bill Layden, It Could Be You. Anybody remembers? It Could Be You, which was, they brought a contestant and reunited them with a loved ones or a friend or whatever. Well, I was selected for some reason. I don't know who turned me in. I had no idea what was happening. They brought me in an audience, and there was my mom. I'm answering this question. And they brought me in an audience, and they brought Bill Layden's It Could Be You. The curtain opened, and Bill Layden said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we have here today a young lady who is such the whole thing, from the war, from so on and so forth. And here from Israel is her mother, Adela Hartmeyer." My mama walked out on stage, and this was the first time I seen my mom after 17 years. She was here reunited with me, thanks to this program, for the first time. And yes, of course we talked about it. My mom, I never heard my mom be this way. She really scared me that day terribly, but it was all done on purpose to get me away. She knew how to handle me all right, believe me. She knew that I wouldn't be able to cope with it, and she was right. She was right. She knew her child well. Yeah. Yes.
Were your brothers and sisters able to reunite with your parents after the war?
For many years, as I just pointed out, I saw my mom after 17 years for the first time. My brother Ziggy came here to the United States in 1957. That was my first reunion with him. And my brother Willie, who is here also now, followed in the later years. And my daddy and my mom came visiting us from Israel several times. Yes?
How were you chosen to come to the United States with Ruth Gruber's group?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that.
I read the book and
Yeah, the book doesn't explain it exactly. we were, okay, the first thing I did, I went to synagogue. As ladies and gentlemen, as you can imagine, what a synagogue means to me. When I went, very often, you know, in Rome, they have the huge arena where they used to kill Christians. And right across from there was a little temple that was closed. The temple was closed. I tried to get in there when I was in the convent, in a Catholic convent, but it was closed. On the day of the liberation, I went in there. And there were there were British and Americans and French committees, you know, trying to take care of the refugees because Rome was terrible. They had a terrible loss. Most of the people deported, children were left alone, orphaned, and it was awful. But we were told, and when I came in there, they wanted I had not much of papers. We had, everything lost. But I had false papers. While I was in the convent, I have gotten from the underground marquise, I got French papers. And I lived with them in the convent. I had those papers. They wanted to know your whole history, and when they found out that I had no idea where my parents were, which was the truth. At that point of liberation, Rome was liberated, but France wasn't. All of France and all of Germany, where my brothers were. And in Italy, where my father was, the part of northern Italy, they were still fighting. And so I had no idea where my parents or my family was. So they asked me when I came to the synagogue, first of all, my identity, and I told them the truth. I told them that I've been a refugee since 1936, that I had been in 5 concentration camps, that I have saved my life in 6 countries, from 6 countries. And so they finally said to me, we are taking a few people to the United States. Would you want to go? And I said, oh, yeah, sure. We were now, the war had just ended a week or so. But I gave my name anyway, and guess what? I was selected. I was selected from the 989 people that were brought to the United States. There's a book about this, where my story is in it. It's called Haven. The library probably has it. Ruth Gruber is the author. She wrote about us, because she was the lady that brought us over. And as Faith wanted it, I was selected. And thank God for that. I was forever grateful. The passage was not so good. We had terrible incidents on the Straits of Gibraltar going out from Europe. It was very bad. We were attacked by Germans, Messerschmitt, on our ships. We were a whole convoy of Americans. I was on an American ship. Can you imagine that? Yeah. That's what Haven is about, the story. So you see, I haven't told you all about it. Any other questions? Please feel free. Yes.
How old were you when you arrived in America?
Oh, that's a tricky question. Ho ho. Oh, honey, I was a teenager. I'm not that young. Pardon? Very difficult. We didn't know the language right away. We learned somewhat in Fort Ontario, Oswego, New York, upstate New York. We had some lessons, but we didn't speak fluent yet. And I had married in Fort Ontario. I was there married to my husband that was from Vienna. And we went together as a family to California from Oswego, New York. I came here in February 1946. Any other question? Now I'm here, I can answer you. Maybe there's something is not clear in your mind about anything, this is the time to ask me.
For those
Yes.
people who are,
I'm sorry. Yes.
There was no way to find out where your mother had ended up?
It took me years and years to see my parents again. And I found out right away from the Red Cross that my mama had survived girls, camped the girls, and that my brothers, I found out about my brother from Auschwitz, that he had survived. And then finally my dad, who was in southern Italy, and my little brother in northern Italy. Any other question?
once again, I'd like to thank Manya Baruch for sharing with us her story tonight.
Thank you, Bethany. Thank you very much.
It's been an experience that I'm sure for all of us is not only educational, but also really inspirational. We're just so grateful that, Manya, that you came to be with us tonight. This time I'd like to call upon the president of our congregation, Rich Weiner.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you on behalf of Congregation Beth Shalom in sharing with Manya what a inspirational and moving story. And I would like to thank Manya on behalf of myself, and also more importantly on behalf of our kids that are here, because it's not going to be so much longer that our kids will not hear this story. So, Manya, thank you.
I just want to add something more to you children, especially. Cherish your parents. Cherish your place where you are in your country right now. And be very, very grateful that you have a life that you can share with your family together. The worst thing that happened to me was when I was alone. I found myself alone. I didn't have my papa and mama with me or my brothers. Remember, that's a very, very important thing to remember. That always appreciate your family.
Thank you. And also, I want to just share with you tonight quickly that Manya talked about love and continuing the celebration of what it is to be Jewish, and something that tonight is remembering some very hard things for all of us to remember about what has happened, but also there are some beautiful things for us to share as Jews in our tradition. And as Manya was known as the singer, we are going to be celebrating next weekend, a beautiful celebration of song. And our very own Kenner Barron will be helping us and really celebrating with us a beautiful night of song. And it's going to be an evening to remember for all of us. And we invite everyone to participate in that beautiful event. And we have tickets here tonight that we would like for you to consider. And please join us. It's going to be at Valencia High School. And is really going to be a beautiful night of celebration in song and in Jewish spirit. And we invite everyone, because it will be a night for everyone. And we look forward to seeing everybody. I would also like to thank Bert and Jeff for putting on the men's club, the Congregation Beth Shalom Men's Club, for putting on an incredible evening for Yom Hashoah. And also to Rabbi, thank you, Rabbi Kahn, and also for Kenner Barron for also celebrating and enjoying with us. Have a great evening, everyone, and we will see you. Thank you.
I also want to acknowledge our accompanist tonight, Tom Mendelson, who is sitting by the piano. We're going to close with two final songs tonight. The first is found in the back of your pamphlet. It's a song of the partisans. And we'll follow that up with Hatikva.
As Manya mentioned, a lot of the terrible victims of the Holocaust were pushed from camp to camp to camp. This was terribly disruptive to them, obviously, but in addition to that, there was a positive thing, which was that news, music, song, poetry, and other things were able to be circulated throughout the camps. And one of the things that happened was that some very strong songs of defiance started to make their way through the camps. The most famous of these is the one that we're about to sing called Zug nicht keinmal. How's my Yiddish? Good? Okay. And I got a little coaching from Manya before this. So and so I'm about to do something I haven't done before, which is sing in Yiddish. And I'd like you all to help me out. On the back of the program, you'll see the words for this. The Yiddish is a little tough to get through, but please try to do it, because this is a song of great spirit and, as I said, defiance. And we can show our spirit and the memory of those people who sang this song when it really, really meant something to them, when it was a little bit of light for them to be able to sing something that their brothers were singing in the other camps. Sag nicht keinmal, als du gehst im letzten Weg, wenn Himmeln bleien, versteh und bläule Teng, weil kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Show. Es wird abheugten unser Trot mir seinen du. Von grimmen Palmenland bis Weilenland von Schnee. Mir seinen du mit unser Pein, mit unser Weh. Und wo gefallen sie, spritzt von unser Blut. Wird sprotzt und unser Gewehre, unser Boot. Now in English. Oh, never say that you go on your last way. Though leaden skies may now conceal the blue of day, because the hour for which we've hungered is so near. Beneath our feet the earth shall thunder, we are here. From land of palm trees to the far-off land of snow, we shall be coming with our torment, with our woe. And everywhere our blood has sunk into the earth, shall our bravery, our vigor blossom forth.
Please rise for Hatikva.
Kolod balevav benima, nefesh Yehudi omia, ulfate mizrach kadima, ayin letzion Sophia.
Please join us for refreshments in the social hall.
So if you have a minute.